Hello, community. Do you know that AI is trying to influence us, and especially here, the narratives of AI companies? Let's have a look. You remember in my last video we were talking about Microsoft's struggle with Copilot, whatever it is, and that we have here a study by Gartner about here from October 2024 on 132 IT leaders, and they say here that this particular AI implementation, only 3% of IT professionals say that this AI provides significant value to the organization. So this was quite a drawback, but I told you AI is a valuable tool for us if we just reduce here the hype that everything must be super intelligent and hyper intelligent. AI itself, with its current capabilities, is amazing. Now, I further thought about this. Now, Microsoft is a beautiful company. They have global investors. They invest here in Microsoft. And the job of Microsoft is to generate profit for its shareholders and also take care about stakeholders. And with their Copilot Plus initiative, where they are absolutely focusing on AI, they have this AI in their product integration. So whatever there is, you will find Copilot Plus or Windows Intelligence now in all their products. This, of course, is now facing a problem if the industry and the service sector tells us currently, according to Gartner, that only 3% say this AI generates significant value for their companies. And you might ask, is there any other market that they could address? Now let's change the example and go to Meta. You know, Meta in the past year had a little bit of a rough past, Remember Meta, we believe in the future of connections in the metaverse. And yeah, but currently Meta has here with their Facebook and WhatsApp and all their social media platform and application connecting here the people globally, they have here their Llama model, a large language model, a vision language model, which is great. So they are here with their social media platforms, they are here in their commercialization here of ads. Great. But you know what? There is now a new masterpiece by Meta. And reading this, I was absolutely thrilled. Because Meta tells us here, Nick Clegg, the president of Meta for Global Affairs, open source AI can help America lead in AI and strengthen the global security. And I thought, this is amazing. And I started to read it. And in my simple understanding, Meta tells us, okay, we need new markets. And you know what? If the commercial industry sector and if the commercial service sector in the US and globally is not providing here the profit that our investors are seeking, there are other markets that we can address. The other markets are the US government agency and all their contractors. And there are a lot of other contractors. Accenture, Amazon, Booz Allen, Databricks, Deloitte, IBM, Lockheed Martin, Microsoft, Oracle, Palantir, Scale, Snowflake. And Meta here tells us here, we have open sourced Llama and we now say, okay, we change our policies and we are now okay if they use now here as market player, the US government agencies, this AI system of us. Plus, they also enter now, contrary to current statements here, the national security. And this means the civil and especially the non-civilian sector. And you know exactly what I'm referring to. And this non-civilian national security sector in the United States is huge. Really, really huge. And here, Meta tells us, they can use Llama, and they can use our Llama AI system, thereby establishing here kind of an AI standard here for all the US government agencies, for all the partners that work with the US government, all the contractors here in the civilian and in the non-civilian sector of the United States of America. And I thought, this is interesting that now here, you have here the link. It's about about.facebook.com, news 2024, that now they are publishing this. And then I just heard here on the news here about the US, and I'm sitting in Europe, so I'm just watching this here, that they have a plan to have a new government efficiency task force or agency or whatever it will be, I don't know. But the person running this new government efficiency task force, supervision or whatever, that this person is a billionaire and this person has also an AI system. And this AI system is a different AI system. And this AI system is a market competitor to the Llama model by Meta. So suddenly we are faced here with two billionaires in the United States, two global corporations in the United States. And now Meta tells us here in this beautiful communication, hey, we offer now Llama to governments, partners, and civilian and non-civilian application, contrary to the current policies, because, the market is here. The market forces are changing. I thought this is interesting, and understanding here the background, I read this study again. Because I think this is a real interesting document here for me sitting here, the heart of Europe, to understand what is going on. But sitting here in the middle of Europe, I'm looking here to the US and I'm looking here to China. And suddenly I feel that there is some tension building up here in this artificial intelligence use cases, in applying AI to economic services, public services, non-civilian services. And I thought it is interesting. And it was confirmed here by Meta's or Facebook.com publication. And Meta here tells us, hey, in a world where national security is linked with economic output, with information, innovation, and job growth, they are talking now here about AI for economic and security interests. And I thought, wait a minute, suddenly AI is security, national security, and everything about economic growth and job growth? Now, this is an interesting shift in the argumentation. Could there be a hidden agenda? So I looked here again, I took this official document by Meta, and I asked for help. And as you know, in my last video, I told you AI is not intelligent, but I think AI is great. It's a great tool if we know its limitation. AI has great capabilities. And I asked my ChatGPT for Omni to help me to understand the intention of this document. And I have to tell you, I was really surprised, and I would like to share this knowledge because it came absolutely unexpected to me. So I logged into ChatGPT 01 preview, and here you have the screenshot that you have the absolute thing. What here, let's call it an American AI system, ChatGPT 01 preview, is analyzing this. And it says here, great, it expresses humility and global enthusiasm. And analysis here, the use of inclusive pronouns like we and our fosters here a sense of community and a shared purpose. It promotes the idea that everyone is on the same team working toward a common goal. And it says, hey, this text assumes that the reader agrees here with Meta's vision and Meta's values. And this presumption can pressure readers into aligning with Meta's stance to be consistent with these essential values, manipulating them into agreement without considering alternative perspectives. And I thought, hey, AI, you're a little bit strange today, no? And ChatGPT went on and said, hey, glossing over ethical dilemmas. While the text mentions ethical and responsibility use, it fails to address specific ethical dilemmas associated with AI in defense and in surveillance, such as privacy invasion, autonomous weaponry, or data misuse. This omission minimizes here potential concerns, manipulating the reader to overlook significant issues. And I said, hey, what's going on? Okay, I'm not a native English speaker, but what is this? Ignoring the need for regulation. And ChatGPT goes on and says, hey, the text does not discuss the importance of regulatory framework or oversight mechanisms to govern the use of AI in sensitive areas. By not acknowledging this text by Meta implies that such powerful technology can be deployed without stringent checks, which is a manipulative way to downplay the necessity of regulation for AI. Optimistic terminology without substance. I've never heard this word before. Analysis by ChatGPT is the use of positive and forward-looking language creates an optimistic narrative that can sway readers emotionally. These phrases are vague and lack specific evidence or examples, which manipulates reader into accepting these claims without scrutiny. The use of trendy terms can create an impression of innovation and expertise. However, without clear definitions, they serve more to impress than to inform, potentially obscuring here a lack of subsistent content and manipulating reader through style over substance. And somehow I was less impressed with this communication by Meta. Framing Meta as benevolent entity, and I said, what? So the quote is, our partnership with the US State Department promotes safe, secure, and reliable AI system to address societal challenges like access to water and electricity. And ChatGPT comes with its analysis and opens my eyes and says, hey, by showcasing here philanthropic initiatives, Meta portrays itself as a company committed to social good. This positive image can overshadow potential criticism and manipulate readers into overlooking the company's commercial interests or ethical concerns related to its primary objectives and operations, downplaying commercial motives. The text focuses on Meta's contribution to societal and national interest while minimizing the discussion of how these initiatives could benefit the company's market position, the company's influence, and the company's profitability. This imbalance manipulates readers into viewing Meta's action as purely altruistic, creating a false sense of urgency. By highlighting the rapid progress of competitors, the text creates a sense of urgency and a fear of being left behind. This can pressure readers and policymakers into supporting Meta's initiative hastily, potentially without adequate consideration of implications. Now, this is something I do not prefer to read here. So, ChatGPT, interesting statement, no? Implying inavailability, suggesting that global adoption of open source AI standard by Meta is inevitable, manipulates reader into believing that supporting Meta is the only viable option. Now it gets interesting. This tactic diminishes the perceived value of exploring alternative strategy or approaches. Oversimplification of complex issues. The text presents open source AI as a straightforward solution to complex national security and economic challenges. This is the first time I've seen those two terms so closely related. So you might ask, so if those AI companies invest billions and maybe trillions in AI infrastructure, and their shareholders say, hey, is this the way we get back our investments? Now we have here this, let's call it a hidden agenda, to find new markets by combining here national security and economic challenges. This is an interesting way, no? ChatGPT goes on, this oversimplification by Meta ignores the multifaceted nature of these issues, including potential downsides, and manipulates readers to accept a simplistic narrative. Or, if you're like I'm sitting in Europe, English is not here my main language. Okay, I was impressed by Meta's declaration. The text asserts that open source AI will lead to numerous benefits without providing concrete evidence or acknowledging the potential for negative consequences. This one-sided portrayal manipulates readers by presenting assumptions as facts. I'm less impressed, Meta. Creating an exclusive binary choice, presenting only two options. The text frames the situation as a choice between adopting Meta's open source AI or falling behind competitors like China. This false dichotomy includes other possibilities. No, it excludes other possibilities, such as developing independent solutions, collaborating with allies on joint standard, or investing in alternative technologies. Promotion of Meta's influence over AI standards. The quote here, and then the analysis by ChatGPT. By promoting its own model as the preferable standard, Meta here pushes for its technology to become the foundation of global AI infrastructure. This self-serving objective is presented as a collective interest, manipulating readers into supporting Meta's dominance in the AI sector. Interesting. Underplaying the role of stakeholders. Minimal acknowledgement of government oversight. The text mentions collaboration with government agency but does not elaborate on the role of government oversight in regulating AI deployment. By underplaying this aspect, Meta positions itself as a primary driver of ethical and responsible AI, manipulating readers into accepting its leadership without question. Ignoring the civil society and the expert input. There's little mention of engaging with civil society organization, ethics, or independent experts in AI governance. This omission suggests that Meta's partnership with corporation and government agencies are sufficient, which manipulates the reader into overlooking the importance of a broader stakeholder involvement. Conclusion, by identifying these additional manipulative elements, we see that the text employs a comprehensive strategy to shape the reader perception in favor of Meta's initiative. Emotional appeals, flattery, and inclusive language are used to build a positive association and sense of unity. The text assumes alignment with the reader values, minimizes potential risk, and uses optimistic terminology to present an overly favorable view of open source AI. So for me, this means, hey, Meta, you are excellent. You are excellent given that you work your whole life in social media platforms, trying here to convince people to buy the products that you promote for other companies. You really know how to convince people. Okay, so we go on. Furthermore, the framing of Meta as a benevolent entity, the creation of false sense of urgency, and the oversimplification of complex issues manipulate readers into supporting the company's objective without critical examination. The text also subtly promotes Meta's influence over AI standards while underplaying the role of other stakeholders and the need for robust oversight. A critical analysis reveals that to advance national and global interest, it is carefully crafted to advance Meta's strategic position in the AI industry. Recognizing these manipulative tactics is essential for stakeholders to engage in informed discussions about the ethical, social, and political implications of developing powerful AI technologies in sensitive areas like national security. And ChatGPT finally comes to the conclusion by thoroughly examining the test. We uncovered here the remaining manipulative elements designed to influence the reader's perception and acceptance of Meta's initiative. A balanced and transparent discourse should include open discussion about potential risk, ethical consideration, and the company's commercial motivations to allow for informed decision-making. And ChatGPT comes back and says, yes, I'm familiar with George Orwell's novel 1984, a dystopian work that explores here the theme of totalitarianism, surveillance, and the manipulation of truth and language. The language you're referring to is called Newspeak, which is designed to limit the freedom of thought and concepts that pose a threat to the regime, such as freedom, self-expression, and individuality. Comparing now Meta's communication to the content and the themes of 1984, we can identify several parallels in the use of manipulative language, propaganda techniques, and the shaping of public perception to align with specific agendas. Here now a detailed comparison by ChatGPT. Manipulative language and Newspeak. Newspeak in 1984 in this novel here is a tool for controlling the thoughts by reducing the complexity of language, eliminating the words related to rebellion or dissent, and using euphemism to disguise negative realities. Meta's communication uses here the phrases like open source AI benefits and responsible users and a virtuous cycle without delving into the complexity or potential downsides. In 1984, the party uses the terms like the Ministry of Love and double plus good to oversimplify language and suppress critical thought. ChatGPT comes and says here, the communication by Meta employs here a euphemistic and optimistic language to mask potential ethical concerns and risks associated with deploying AI in national security context, similar to how Newspeak obtains or aims here to obscure the truth and suppress dissent. In 1984, the Ministry of Truth disseminates propaganda, alter historical records, and controls all information to maintain the party's power. Meta's communication highlights the partnership and the positive applications while omitting potential risks, ethical dilemmas, and negative consequences. Both texts control the narrative by selectively presenting information, promoting a one-sided view that manipulates the audience into accepting a particular perspective without question. And you might ask, Meta is able to do this as the dominant force in the social media environment? They have found ways to persuade customers that they should buy some products. Interesting. Patriotic appeals and nationalism. This is interesting. The party in 1984 uses nationalism and fear of external enemies to unite the populace and justify its authoritarian practices. Meta's communication emphasizes competition with nations like China, creating a sense of urgency and fear to rally support. In the novel 1984, it was constantly at war with other superstates, and the party uses this conflict to stoke nationalism and justify oppressive measures. ChatGPT comes back with a comparison and says the communication by Meta and the novel by George Orwell both exploit fear of external threats to manipulate the audience into supporting actions that may infringe on ethical standards or individual freedom. Doublethink. Doublethink is the ability to hold two contradictory beliefs simultaneously, accepting both as true. In Meta's communication, it advocates here for openness, transparency, and accountability, while promoting AI applications in secretive national security operation. Double speech, double think. Comparison. The communication by Meta presents contradictory ideas without acknowledging the inconsistency, expecting the audience to accept them uncritically, akin to double think. Control over future standards and thought. In 1984, the party by George Orwell seeks to control not just the present but also the future by shaping language and thought. Meta's communication aims to set global open source standard for AI, influencing how technology develops worldwide. In the novel 1984, the party controls the past and present to ensure its ideology remains unchallenged in the future. ChatGPT tells us both the communication by Meta and the novel by Orwell reflect an effort to control the future direction of thought and technology, consolidating power and limiting alternative perspective. Surveillance and the loss of privacy. While not explicitly about surveillance, Meta Communications' promotion of AI national security can imply increased monitoring capabilities. Meta's communication discusses AI applications that could enhance surveillance under the guise of national security. In George Orwell's 1984, the omnipresent telescreens and the thought police constantly monitor citizens. ChatGPT comes back with a comparison and says the potential use of AI for surveillance in the communication by Meta mirrors the invasive monitoring in 1984, raising concerns about privacy and individual freedoms. ChatGPT goes on and says ethical concerns and moral responsibilities. 1984 presents a society where ethical considerations are suppressed for the sake of power. Meta's communication mentions ethical and responsible AI use without substantive plans or transparency. In 1984, the party pretends to act for the greater good. ChatGPT makes a comparison that communication by Meta's vague commitments to ethics parallel to the party's hollow justification, potentially masking unethical practices behind noble language. Psychological manipulation and emotional appeals. The party in 1984 uses emotional manipulation to maintain control, such as orchestrated hate sessions. Meta's communication uses patriotism, fear of foreign adversaries, and optimistic visions to manipulate emotions. ChatGPT makes a comparison as both texts manipulate emotions to suppress critical thinking and encourage conformity with the presented agenda. Meta, this is quite amazing. ChatGPT comes to a conclusion, and I learned something. Meta's communication shares several manipulative techniques with the oppressive regime depicted in the novel 1984. It uses manipulative language. It uses euphemisms and positive dictions to mask potential negatives, similar to newspeak. Propaganda. Meta's communication presents a one-sided narrative, omitting risk and ethical concerns, akin to the Ministry of Truth control of information. ChatGPT tells us that meta communication has here exploits nationalism and fear of external threats to garner support, paralleling to the party tactics in 1984. Meta's communication contains contradictory messages without acknowledgement, reflecting doublethink. Control over standard. Meta seeks to influence future AI developments globally, mirroring here in George Orwell's party control over thought. Ethical superficiality. Meta's communication pay lip service to ethics without substantive commitments, similar to George Orwell's party morale facade. Emotional manipulation. Meta communication leverages here emotions to reduce critical analysis. And ChatGPT comes back and says, hey, by comparing Meta's communication to the novel 1984, it becomes evident that both use manipulative language and propaganda to advance specific agendas while suppressing critical discussion of potential risk and ethical implications. The communication strategies here by Meta raises concerns about transparency, accountability, and the balance between technological advancement and societal values, much like the dystopian society Orwell warns about. I think for an AI system, this is quite an impressive analysis, no? ChatGPT finally comes back with a note as this comparison serves as a critical analysis of Meta's communication content and rhetorical strategies, highlighting the importance of scrutinizing persuasive communication, especially when they concern powerful technologies and national interests. So there we have it now. This is the analysis by ChatGPT. This is what I learned from ChatGPT, analyzing here Meta's communication to its shareholders, to its stakeholders, and I think to the global community about what are the future intentions of Meta. I hope this video shed some light on my thoughts. I learned something. I wanted to share what I learned here. Thank you to ChatGPT to providing here those insights. And if you found it interesting, why not subscribe and have a look at my next video.